so I can think of a lot of things. I can follow through. I have energy, and yeah, so it's super exciting. Oh, yes, it is. There he is. Hello, hello.
Hello, bro.
Wow. Wow. Well, welcome to the Inside Scoop. It's there's one side of you that, yeah, I think that's super bright. Can you center it a bit, or I know,
Yeah, I can do that. I just got the sun in the background of my window here. I have a idea.
Great. Look at me, Elijah. I got notes. Yeah. I got questions. So if you just freeze, we got all the notes.
Yeah. Are you saying you want to be the main interviewer here? That's okay. I'll just sit here.
No. You did that last time. You put me in the main role. This is your show, my friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Justice. Perhaps a little context before jumping in, because we would like to glean from your wisdom, and just the name Justice Law seems to open up doorways in terms of which perspective that you're coming into things. And Yogi Shambhu has said that you are tracking what is going on sort of in the lawful legal world. Would you like to introduce yourself and maybe give us a bit of a download as to where you're coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first and foremost, it's definitely a beautiful honor to be invited to be here to speak and to share and to have a conversation. I do not in any way, shape, or form purport to know everything. And the fascination of life really is that I have the opportunity to learn new things every single day. So I embrace and approach this topic with a great amount of humility, because the more that I learn, the greater the circumference of my knowledge, but also the greater circumference grows of my ignorance. It's like the more I know I don't know. So that's a little bit of the humility that is the backdrop of my study and how I approach these topics.
Okay.
Wow, I trust you more already than many people who leverage their authority.
Yeah, is it authority or ego? Like which one?
That's a really good question for every person. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So so it's great to be participate in an organic conversation as well. There's no notes on my side. There's no questions that I've been pre-screened or anything like that. So yeah, happy to engage in this organic flow. To give just a quick snippet of insight of an intro, as you both know, and as you've said, name Justice Law. That is certainly much to grow into, much of a kind of a mantle of responsibility that comes just with that name. Many people immediately knee-jerk reaction tend to ask me, "Is that your real name?" and the answer is yes and no. In this, my human name, which I've been given, is Justin. That's what my parents named me. And Justin is actually derived, the etymology is derived from justice. So my parents were pretty close. And Justice is, for me, actually, if someone asks me if it's my real name, it's more than a name. I can't even call it a name. It's more than a name. It's a reminder. It's a point of reference to guide me. And it's a spirit that I have the capacity and the blessing to be attuned in with. So it resonates my soul's calling, my reason for being here. So with that, you can see it's much more than a name. Yeah.
What time did you change your name? Like at what time did you make the big shift?
So it was 2009 that the name Justice really did find me. It really clicked with many aspects of things that I was studying, and then action that I was taking. And so that does kind of segue well into a bit of an intro of my story, which is in 2008. I was at that point would have been like 22. I embarked on quite a fascination and study, learning one fact, which then revealed another stone to overturn to another stone to overturn, which started with food. Started to learn of started learning about the Monsanto and genetically modified foods and organic, and then also the relationship between governments and big corporations and the monetary system. And as I began to learn more, I began to change. So I started to eat organically. I started to live holistically with kind of a more whole diet. But then beyond that, I started to then watch certain documentaries, learn about the monetary system, learn about the debt-based fiat currency system which we find ourselves in today, and how it's in short, straight cutting to the chase, legalized fraud of the highest order. And that led me to like in learning that I had actually a pretty significant deep sense kind of in my heart of betrayal of trust, betrayal from the system, the government, who I had up until that point perceived as people who are working for my good interest, pay into a system and you're getting taken care of and there's all these benefits and they're there to help you. Quite a betrayal of trust to learn that the very fundamental fabric with which our entire system is built upon, notably in the monetary system, it is legalized fraud. I could no longer see the world the same at that point. Everything was colored differently from the lens of the perception and recognition of this deep violation. And as I continued to study more, my fascination and interest was drawn towards studying law. And from that point in time, I could begin to then learn and see that there was actually not only just legalized fraud, but there was legislation on the books that was violating my rights. And I really was left with one option, straight up. I had to do something about it. I had to take action. And that began quite a journey, quite a story of taking action against the province of Ontario, which eventually led me into court representing myself over a 3-year trial, which led me to study litigation law and faced off with the government in court over a 3-year trial and eventually won. So that was quite a experience that not only showed me just how my own capacity and kind of the power that I have, but legitimately the power that the individual has in relationship to the state. The individual is far more powerful than what has been propagandized, than what has been indoctrinated into our minds, and it's a very inconvenient set of facts in relationship to that I can get into a little bit more detail for sure, but it's a very inconvenient reality for those who ultimately want to try to control masses, because the individual is far more powerful than, like I said, has been presented to us. So yeah, that's a quick snapshot of an insight of a bit of a background story that's kind of propelled me and led me up towards today, which of course I can share a little bit more.
I'd love to hear what you did win, and go deep into that, because I don't find many people who have one. Shambhu, did you want to go somewhere else, or what do you think?
Well, just want to say, first of all, wow, that is such an inspiration, and that is exactly what I was hoping that we would gain from this conversation, is an example of empowerment through not only research, fascination, the deep dive of an individual who isn't necessarily, didn't go through the normal channels of becoming an expert and empowered, but in fact did that regardless, and
Yes.
has created mobility and autonomy and really instated their God-given rights.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so that's just so exciting. But just want to throw it back to you, Mr. Elijah.
Well, I just over the years, I've known many people that have been, whether gone through the sovereign being or lawful, or it comes down to languaging. And so for you to win, it means that if people follow your path and follow your languaging and follow your documentation, whatever you did win in, you act as that pioneer that leads the way for others to duplicate. And so what exactly did you win and how did you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the action that I took, that I started in 2009, was learning of the violation of my right, what's called my right to travel. So there's a lot to unpack around that, but the short and sweet is there's some pretty powerful case law, like Thompson versus Smith, for instance, that very articulates with such clarity and precision that the state does not have the power to that ultimately in Thompson versus Smith, it states that the individual has the common law right to travel in his personal conveyance on the public roads, but the city cannot prohibit or permit because it's protected under his right to life, liberty, and property. Now, paraphrase that a bit. I don't have it in front of me, but in short, there's a common law tradition and history of having what's called the right to travel, and this goes back thousands of years. And the right to travel ultimately is a right. Ultimately, is the power of free action, the power to take action that violates nobody else. That's fundamental. That's what a right is. A right can never do wrong, is another way of perceiving it from the Maxim perspective. A right can do no wrong. So when one has a right to travel, they actually have the right to, and they own their private property. They can actually go on the public roads and utilize their property thereon. And it's the history of it is actually is very clear. However, over the past better part of just around the last century, maybe about 110 years or so, that right was gradually converted into a privilege by use of a license. And now a license is an instrument of permission to do something that would otherwise be unlawful. And a right, juxtaposition, a right can never be deemed unlawful, otherwise it would not be a right. And so the license, being an instrument of permission to do something that would otherwise be unlawful, is seeking permission from the state to engage in some form of action, in this case, driving on the roads. And so this has happened far before I was even born, but going back over like I said, over 100 years, over time, incrementally, it first started as like a 25-cent little voucher paper that you would put and a voucher paper that would be specifically used for commercial activity. So I'm giving you this backdrop because it sets up everything else. It's important to kind of go through a bit of a history, then gradually up to the present. So it was initially the licensure and was in place to protect to preserve and to protect the very structure of the roads that were being used for commercial activity by corporations. So when you think buses and you think trucks and whatnot that are engaged in commercial activity on the roads. And so that's how the license start, which was for commercial activity. Because as the case law articulates as well, it's like to travel and transport your property thereon, as a private individual to transport your property thereon, that's a right. but to use the highways and the roadways for private gain, now that is a privilege requiring a license. So fast forward over the generations, there is another element. So law influences culture and culture influences law. In this instance, with the legislation and everything being changed, that started to gradually influence culture to the degree that that a license then became synonymous with a certification of skill, where it's like, oh, you get a license, so you know what you're doing, so you know how to drive, so you're safe to drive. But that is, of course, not the legal definition, which is what matters, the legal definition, not what society thinks it might mean, but what is the actual legal definition. So bring it forward to the moment in 2009 that really flipped in my mind was this, that in studying the system and learning about and having that deep violation, which I shared earlier with you, there were so many big concepts that I had no idea even like where to begin. There was such a gigantic violation. I had no idea even what to do, the 22, 23-year-old me. And but in learning of this, the right to travel and the violation thereon, I realized that, this automobile, my car, and this, it's in my hands. It's tangible. It's in my control. This is something that I could start with, and this is something that I could take action on right now. As far as the monetary system, the fiat debt-based currency, and the fraud from there, and tax and all those bigger topics, it was beyond me for sure. But the automobile was within my hands, so that's when I just started to take action. How that looked was. I had learned of a process called the Notice of Understanding and Claim of Right. That took me on a six-month communication process, which where I was communicated with 25 government officials, from everyone from the Queen to the Prime Minister, to the finance minister. I named them specifically, like as the individual, not just like some department, but the actual finance minister, which I think was Jim Flaherty at that time, and and the transport minister, and all that. And so the logic was this, that I these are my understandings and this is my intention, and these are the rights that I am claiming. You have a sworn duty to protect my rights. I'm communicating in advance to avoid controversy and conflict. If there is anything that I'm claiming that is unlawful, that is a violation of anybody else's rights, you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity here to object by rebuttal, by responding to this notice that I'm serving you through registered mail. But you must respond to the notary's office so they may witness an official response. Failure to respond within 30 days, the notary will issue a certificate of non-response, where the notary is an affiant, or acting on an affidavit, asserting that this party failed to respond at this time. With that, it will generate evidence of your acquiescence, which is your silent agreement to the rights that I am claiming. And then I had different levels and layers of communication that I had then shared with those parties. And after 6 months of no party responding, and with multiple opportunities, I had what's called my documents in my view were cured. And then I took action, took the Queen's plates off my car, put on my private plates bearing the name Justice, and started to exercise my common law right to travel. And it was pretty exhilarating, pretty exhilarating. And then how that led back to my, I'll stop right there. I'd like to talk about my trial next, but I maybe wanted to just check in to see how what you two are maybe thinking based on what I've shared so far.
Go ahead, Shem.
First of all, did you have any interactions with the Queen's law enforcement with this? I mean, you have a whole other identification plate here.
Yeah. So that's the next part of the story that I'll share. So I'll just get into that then. So that would have been December of 2009 that I did that transformation and transition. Now, leading into 2010, I was traveling, you could say, around for 3 months, which led me to March 15th of 2010. And that was in Toronto. I was being followed around by undercover police. And then they stopped me on the roadside, to which we had an over an hour interaction. The short version is that Officer PC Eden asked me if I have my license, registration, and insurance, the typical line of questioning. And I shared with her that I am exercising my common law right to travel, a right that I have communicated in advance to your chief of police and all ministers in place. And I have a certified true copy of all the documents that I had utilized to communicate that are signed off by the notary as being true and correct. And I call it my traveling portfolio, and you can review it. You have opportunity to review it. I know what I'm doing is something that's quite unconventional, but you can see right here. So she took my traveling portfolio, read through it for about 15 minutes and came back, and she's like, are you some law student? Like, are you trying to do some like project or something? I'm like, no, I am simply exercising my rights. I recognize that it is unconventional, but I'm duly exercising my rights. And she what ended up happening was Officer PC Warman. So she ended up calling backup, which consisted of 6 officers. So there were 6 of the these armed goons of the state. I say that a little bit jokingly, of course, but 6 officers came and surrounded me, surrounded the vehicle, and Officer PC Warman reached in, unlocked my my door, opened the door, and they said that they were going to have to place me under arrest for failure to identify myself, which was very strange because I had all my information and all my identification in the documents, and I was not withholding any of that information at all. And so I looked at them. There was like 4 police at the door, and I looked at them and I was like, well, you 4 are armed to the teeth, and I am, of course, unarmed. I protest your actions, but I am under extreme duress, so I will comply for my very own safety. And so I stepped out. They put me under arrest and did the search of me, and then also took me around back to the car, and then turned me aside while PC Leclerc proceeded to illegally search my car, took my camera, deleted all my footage that I was recording on the scene, and then all this while my back was turned. And they then took me out of the cuffs, and I was quite surprised. And then PC Eden came to me, and she handed me my traveling portfolio with 7 summons. She said to me, like, we don't understand what you're doing or what you're saying. We've never seen this before. And all I know is I have a job to do. You don't have license, registration, or insurance. But maybe you could explain what you were doing to the justice of the peace, and they would have a better understanding. But I do have to place charges, and here are 7 summons to appear. And then they handed me my traveling portfolio and 7 summons, and that was how the interaction went down on the roadside.
Just wow, if we're looking at this as something that's applicable to everyone,
Yeah.
first of all, the courage to be able to interact in an unusual way. We are so conditioned to interact with authority, Elijah, in a certain way. And so, just an example, that's just one of the characteristics that I'm seeing of many that are so applicable to other people, that they can start to break up the consistent fabric that makes up a lot of our assumptions, and trying to tease out the assumption from our actual rights and our actual relationship as an individual with the state. That's wow.
How did you feel in that moment in terms of, like, I guess you knew you were sort of entering into the arena, like you had done your work, you prepared for this moment, you knew it was going to come at some point. They targeted you, and then they came at you, but they didn't know what they were coming at. And so I guess that, did you have any mentors at this time? Were you all alone, or did you have people that were sort of in the background, that they were tracking you and that you were exchanging information with?
So the short answer is I was alone, in the sense of doing it myself. I was on online forums, and I did have a friend who was somewhat of you could say a colleague, and we were both trying it we were both taking the actions along at the same time. And but as far as like from a practical perspective, I was doing it solo. Yeah.
Because
and then how sorry, go ahead.
Well, just think that's one of the hardest parts, isn't it? I mean, if you were part of a team and you had advisors and you had media, and you were like the tip of a phalanx where there was a lot of people behind you, that's very different than going into the jaws alone. So I just, like Yogi says, I mean, a lot of strength and courage is needed, isn't it? And so just, thank you for doing that. So what happened next?
So what happened next, and answer another question you had, was kind of how I felt in that interaction. So at the beginning, I had full faith and belief that what I was doing and the communication that I was taking in advance was accomplishing something, was leading to the respect and protection of my rights. And when the interaction started, I had watched other videos of interactions happening as well. So I was aware that this was a reality, but I was prepared. I was very prepared with my documentation and whatnot. So I actually did think that it would have been a productive conversation, that they would have recognized and respected my rights, because I had done no wrong. There was no damaged party. I didn't have a car crash and try to flee the scene or anything like that. I was actually just peacefully driving along, and then they veered in, and to ultimately stop me on the road. But what happened, so during the interaction, I was actually pretty exhilarated, and it was quite enjoyable in some respect. And I was the fun. It must have been strange for them, because I didn't have any kind of fear. Like I wasn't scared of their authority or what they're going to say or do. But I was a threat to them. I recognize now, after the fact, I was a threat to them, an intellectual threat. Not to try to say that I'm all this big smart or anything, but I wasn't a threat to them physically, but I was a threat to their perceived authority. Authority with which they seem to forget where they get it from. We'll talk about that later, where they derive their authority from. We'll get to that later. But how I felt is, afterwards, I legitimately felt like I got kicked in the nuts. figuratively speaking. I felt another like a it, yeah, like after it all went down, and how, they had no respect for my rights. They were just completely violated me, as far as not respecting my rights, and then proceeding to search my car. And then especially the biggest thing that hurt me was the deleting of my footage. That was the biggest thing that hurt big time. Because, like, look, if you're doing everything right, you're doing no wrong, why would you have to delete my footage? That's illegal. It's a deep violation. And Officer PC Leclerc is his name. Like, I hope he gets birds pooing on him forever for the rest of his life. Like, it's but jokes aside, like, it's just if everything was done right and by the book and totally good, why would you need to delete my evidence? That is an incredibly massive violation. So after it all went down, I sat down, and tears started to come to my eyes. I felt like I got beat up, not physically, of course. And I'm sitting there on the roadside, like trying to make sense of it all. And I remember standing up, putting my chin up, and saying, and I looked at the summons, and I said, I am going to learn how to represent myself in court, and I'm going to win this. I'm going to win this. And I said then and there that I'm going to win this. And I didn't know how I was going to, but I had that resolve.
And isn't that in some ways almost the most important thing, is like having the right attitude, because you're going into a situation where you're not getting the right clues. They're not there to help you. They're there to hinder you. And so you have to have that sort of, like Alexander the Great, I'm going to the end, we are conquering this entire empire kind of attitude. Because then you can deal with everything they throw at you.
Yes, I believe that the inner game is inner game precedes the outer game, for sure. So there was a group that I had just met, that I was invited to about a few weeks before that incident, actually. They were a group of peers who were also trying to study the law. And but I didn't really know them too well. Just like I said, I just got connected with them. And after, had met with them once before, and everybody was, especially this one in particular, a guy, I won't say his name, but he espoused to be kind of this guru, right? Like, he had all the answers and everything. He knew all the everything, right? He was even having, like, selling conferences of tickets where they're like $100 a seat, where he was teaching about these concepts. So I recall, like, meeting that once before, that there was a fair amount of knowledge exchange, and they were pretty impressed with someone so young being so courageous as well. And then after the incident, so after got stopped by the police and had the summons, I did go back to them and share, like, kind of like what happened and what went down, and then they started, particularly this one guy started sharing all this advice of what I need to do. And he told me, he's like, you need to put a lien on the police department. And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Have you done this before? And he's like, no, I haven't done this before, but there's this guy in the United States. And I'm like, oh, okay, hold on. Do you know this guy? Do you know him personally? Can we pick up the phone and have a call with him? It's like, well, I don't know him personally, but I was learning and learning this and the other. Okay. No thanks. and then at that point, I called the meeting, kind of wrapped it up, and I started to reflect. I'm like, I'm gonna have to find my own way forward, because the Freeman approach with the notice of understanding and intent, that did nothing. You know, all these other people all online spouting, you know, sharing like all these things that you need to do that were all often lacking direct experience, they also did nothing. So where I started with kind of my critical mind was directed towards the state and the, you know, you could say the official narrative. I started to expand my critical mind towards the alternative views as well. And at that point, I realized I was going to have to find my own pathway forward. And that commenced my, you could say, more of a formal study of litigation law, very organized study of litigation law, particularly with a course called Juris Dictionary by Dr. Frederick Graves, who's a juris doctor in Florida, teaches people how to represent themselves in court, called pro se litigants. And then, so I studied that course. I was reading Advocacy Primer, which is a book that helps law students conduct their case. Because when you go to law school, you actually don't learn how to run a case, like how to actually go to court. You don't learn that. It's fascinating. You actually have to go out into the real world and article and kind of work under the wing of another, you know, litigation lawyer where they're going to teach you the ropes. And so this book, Advocacy Primer, prepares law students for engaging in a court case. So I was studying that, and I started to refine my circle as well, and developed a mastermind, a group of other people who are also going into court. Other friends, a couple other friends who are also going to court, and we're helping each other with research and studying case law and writing our arguments. And so that was me, like, kind of blazing my own, you could say, like, finding my own way forward in my approach on how I'm ultimately going to win this case.
Wow. What a peaceful warrior to be able to contain frustration, indignance, and actually channel it through the mental faculties. That's a spiritual process, truly taking raw emotion and channeling it through the intellect and actually having that type of follow through. You know, and we talk a lot, right, on this show about how you have, you know, if you want to be a health expert, you have to become your own health expert. You have to be the lab. You have to actually do that work for yourself. If you want that in a legal front, if you want that in an environmental front, you know, all of these areas, you can't farm it out. And what an interesting thing that you were saying about the Freeman, because we all hear a lot about that in these circles. And yet a lot of people don't necessarily know how much it's actually worked in the real world, but they have it kind of there as a comfort. And so it embrazens their party conversations, but they don't necessarily translate to the real world. So it sounds like you really went through the essential maturing process to actually become empowered in this way.
I didn't realize it at the time, but I do realize it now. But this was a rite of passage for me. It was a rite of passage. So I'm fortunate to have had that experience, because I know that is something that is missing quite a bit in society, in our current modern society. There lacks a rite of passage, especially for men. Not to downplay the importance of it for women as well, but just only speaking for myself. It was a rite of passage.
Wow.
So when you went to the trial, also, like, when you enter the courtroom, when you, like, there's so much subtlety in terms of how you present yourself, right? In terms of your position. Could you go into the details of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. So this is I enjoy. I was just thinking of some memories that I found funny, but so I'll share it. Okay, so my first time going into court, it was not smooth and it was not pretty. It was actually quite rough. So I had my first. You have your first hearing, which is to set a trial date, and this was so just arranging the timeline. This was before I learned of jurisdictionary, which was quite a change in direction. So my first appearance, I want to enter in, and my thought process was that I'm going to declare my sovereignty and saying that I'm sojourning this matter, and that I'm exercising my rights, and that and that was all I knew I was going to say. but at that point, I to again put the timeline of events. At that point, I hadn't taken on litigation law as a formal study. I was still kind of in that transition phase before finding my own way forward. And so I went in, and there was this petite, cute little, maybe 4'5" Filipino JP, Justice of the Peace, who was being very, very patient for sure. but it was quite evident that, one, I didn't know what I was doing, or didn't know what I was talking about. Because, and if I look back now, realize what I was doing, what specifically what I did was flawed, was I started to present arguments at that hearing, and that's not the time to present arguments. The purpose of that hearing was to determine guilt or not guilty, and then to set a trial date. But I'm there presenting all these arguments on the record, being sovereign, sojourning this matter, this. And so what ended up happening was I was certainly taking up a lot of time with something that should have really just been a few minutes. And eventually the JP, she called the end to it. She didn't, because she called the end to it. There's been a trial date that's been set. And then I recall that at that point I was like, okay, well, I'm going to leave. So I got up and I left, and I had a few friends who were there with me, and we all kind of marched out, and nothing got established except a trial date. And everything that I was saying in relation to sovereignty and all that stuff also made no notable difference. And this was, I gathered a few insights and experiences from some of my friends in the alternative, you could say, legal activism space. But that was also actually an experience that had an effect on my eventual decision to find my own path, right? Which came about a month, maybe a couple months thereafter. So that was my first appearance. Then as I started to study litigation law, there was something that changed in me. Huge. This is very key to share. So the free men and a lot of these legal activists perceive the court as the enemy. They see it's them. It's their rules. You don't want to do them to this, right? Kind of perceive the crown and the court as like one thing called the system or the machine or whatever you want to call it. And there's an antagonistic view of court. You don't want to cross the bar. You don't want to say you're the person. You don't want to do this. All these all these little snippets of incorrect advice that I see kind of thrown around pretty casually in this space. And as I began to study, like more formally, again, I didn't go to law school, but I took it on as a study, private study of law for practical application. Then I started to see things actually quite differently. There's a lot of times like the word jurisdiction is thrown around without really not accurately using the word jurisdiction, but they kind of perceive the court as the jurisdiction and you don't want to be under their jurisdiction. That's what I always heard. You don't want to be under their jurisdiction. And then as I'm studying the very structure of the court and the very structure of a trial, I could see that, wait, there are 3 jurisdictions. And nobody in the freeman space, Robert Menard or, neither of these experts ever talked about there being 3 jurisdictions. They just talked about jurisdiction being like this one thing. And these 3 jurisdictions actually interact in very specific ways. And the 3 jurisdictions being the court, the crown, and the defense. Okay. And studying the court, I recognized that, whoa, wait a second. The court is actually the venue where the individual commands the power of the state. The court is the venue where the individual commands the power of the state. And that the court itself is not the judge, it's not the court reporter, it's not the clerk, it's none of the actors in the room. The court itself is the record. The court is the record, the public record. What evidence was presented, what arguments were presented, what questions were asked to the witnesses, and etc. The record of the court is the record itself. And it dawned on me, I'm like, whoa, this is actually the venue and opportunity to assert my rights. This is the place to do it. This is the place to take action. This is the place to command the power of the state. And with that, I had a flip of perspective. No longer was the court an antagonist. The court was actually my friend. I perceived the court as my friend, and it was there to help me. And that flipped the switch in a significant way in how I approached the court, how I conducted myself, how I perceived the court. Because when you perceive it as an enemy, you're not going to want to, let's say, find look for resources that can help you. You'll be like, they're just bad, don't even look there. But in perceiving it as my friend, then I'm like looking at the forums and I'm looking at the resources that they have published, available right there to help you. And it cannot be overstated what a significant change of perspective would lead to my eventual results, which I'll continue on. Yeah.
Mr. Elijah?
Well, I mean, just in the basic sense of things, I mean, if I'm looking at someone just in general, and I think they're the enemy, I'm rude, I don't treat them right, I don't trust them. I will create, if you're not an enemy, I will create an enemy. Mm-hmm. And if someone's a friend, you do your best to treat them right and you trust them and you want to do well by them. And so I think, fundamentally, hitting, make your enemy your friend is the name that Malidoma Somé, what his name meant. And just, that idea of turning your enemy into your friend, I think is huge, because I've never heard that before. And I've never heard the 3 jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, awesome. It always, that's totally new to me in terms of, I'd like more explanation as to the differences between the court, the crown, and the defense. Because a lot of times when you're looking at on the front lines and the idea of jurisdiction, that whoever's speaking, like if the First Nations people speak they keep their jurisdiction, but if the whites speak, they lose the jurisdiction, kind of thing. So I would like further explanation for sure.
Absolutely, and I'm more than happy to elaborate more on that. And then just one quick correction, actually, because I did say Crown and defense. That's specifically in a criminal or quasi-criminal trial, which was what I was doing with the Traffic Act. But the correct terms are the court, the plaintiff, and the defense.
Okay.
So the plaintiff
that's a
can
big
be you,
difference.
or the plaintiff can be you, or it can be the Crown, for instance.
Okay.
But I was just sharing that initially in respect to the quasi-criminal proceeding that I was engaged in there with court.
Okay.
Yeah. So things rapidly began to change as studying the resources I shared earlier, but then also actually going to the law library and then looking at the original case law. There's a case law called Rex versus Sung Chong. It's in 1909. And I looked at the original case law and the book was dusty and I like blew it off. And I looked at the original actual case law. And this was talking about the right for an individual to use the roads is the paramount right of the highways. And so that was our Rex versus Sung Chong 1909. If anybody wants to check that out. So going to the law library, like that also enhanced my study significantly and helped me prepare myself. And I'd like to get into the trial now. Actually, I'll just kind of rapid fire events. So had that first appearance, then had a trial date set. Then from there was a couple scenarios that were unfolding in my world where I wasn't able to do that trial date at that point in time. So I filed a motion to adjourn. And that was my first motion that I've ever filed, a motion to adjourn. And so went to court, organized the time, the date of when the hearing would happen, presented my motion for adjournment and the reasoning why I'm requesting. The court heard my argument, asked the Crown if they had any counter arguments to it, and they did not. And so the motion to adjourn was granted. Okay. So I adjourned it to a later date. But that gave me more time to prepare and get organized. So then we had the next trial date, and so the next trial date, the officers actually failed to show up. And at that point in time, the let's just say that ordinary person would request to have the charges dropped. The officer didn't show up. That's usually your way out. It's like, oh, phew, they didn't show up. Great, now I'm gonna win. And that opportunity was there before me, but I was like, no, I would actually like to give them another opportunity to show up. And so I didn't request a stay of proceedings or a dismissal. I was like, yeah, well, let's give them another opportunity to show up. So and another trial date was set. So then I think it was like some 8 months later. I can get the exact dates and everything for you if need be. But so then moving forward, I realized that there were certain, so I was studying a case law called, oh shoot, wow, it's on the tip of my tongue. I'll get back to the name itself. But I was studying a case law where I recognized that there were certain elements of disclosure that I was missing. And so then I filed a pretrial and organized a pretrial to discuss the elements of disclosure with the Crown in the presence of a Justice JP. And due to this, required to another adjournment. So that was a motion to adjourn, and I presented the pretrial date that I've already scheduled for these reasonings. And this was the first moment, like, where, there was a moment, I'll share it. So the JP, after I presented that, it was granted, the adjournment was granted for those reasons. when I said that I scheduled the pretrial already on this date at this time, he looked at the paperwork and he looked over his glasses. He's like, "You scheduled a pretrial?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Wow, okay." And after granting that motion, then he was like, "Thank you for coming out, sir, and you have yourself a great day." And then I look over at the Crown, and the Crown bowed to me and was like, "Thank you for coming. Have a great day." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, have a great day too. See ya." And it was such a strange moment because I got all this respect in a venue that that never happens. And I was like, what's changed here? Like, what's going on? It seems so strange that they thanked me for coming, both the court and the Crown, and had given me all this respect. And I was giving them a significant amount of respect. So I think that the reflection swings both ways, so to speak.
Yeah. You were truly initiated in. It's amazing that you leaned in, so you didn't just take the exit, that the process and the culture, your involvement in the culture of the court truly seemed to be your precedent, or the thing that you held most value. That must have been viscerally felt by the other players.
Yeah, I definitely was holding the court with an esteem of respect, and also keeping my mindset on the record. This is everything that I'm saying is being recorded. It's all playing into an effect. Every motion that I'm filing is a flag on the record for grounds for an appeal. So I was very careful with what I said, what I didn't say, and that certainly did have an effect. I remember the name of the case law just now. It's R.V. Stinchcomb. So had that pretrial. That pretrial was with the Jamie McPherson, who is the manager for Toronto prosecutors. And I was a little surprised that like the top of the top prosecutors was there engaging in my case. But we had the pretrial, which is you're sitting at a table that's like maybe like like a 3x8 or 3x6 whatever table. Myself, the Crown, and then the JP on the left side, and it's a mini little trial in a small little room. And in short, I presented the elements of disclosure that I was missing, and that the JP agreed with my position, and then made a ruling that the Crown had to provide me these additional elements of disclosure, and gave them 11 months to get me that disclosure, which would brought us to like, I think it was like August the 14th of 2012 or so. That was around the time you and I met, around those years. And so then things kept proceeding. The next trial date, there was was going off against a Crown attorney, and so at that point, PC Eden did show up, and then I presented to the court that so just so you're aware, in the pretrial, you provide all your contact information for them to get a hold of you. And something with the Stinchcomb, which is very important, is that the Crown has a legal duty to provide this disclosure without request from the defense. So by me requesting it was putting more weight, so to speak, on my side in the balance of the record in the proceeding. And so over the course of that 11 months, they did not contact me in through my email, through my phone, or anything, and had not provided me any disclosure. So we come to that date, and I shared with the court that, this is not, I have not been provided disclosure yet. The Crown were ordered by the court in the pretrial to provide me this disclosure. I still have not received it. So I didn't file an 11B, but I alluded to the fact that with 11B under the charter, I'm supposed to have a speedy trial within reasonable grounds, and I'm unable to proceed. And so I called for I filed a motion to dismiss. I didn't have it prepared, but I just filed it. And then my motion to dismiss was denied, and the Crown was given another opportunity to provide me with that disclosure, which brings us to March 26, 2013. So on that date, PC Eden appeared again, and I had still not been provided any disclosure. And so then I presented to the court that the timeline of events on this date, this happened, this date, this happened, this date, this happened, this date, and then that brings us to today. Without that disclosure, I cannot mount a full and proper defense. And the Crown, now disobeying a court order and then also violating RV Stitchcomb, standing is illegal. The Crown's standing is now illegal. And I presented that, and I presented that I don't have the disclosure and I'm unable to proceed because of the malfeasance of the Crown. And then I presented that to the court. The court, the JP, she turned around to Jamie McPherson and said, "What is going on with the Toronto prosecutors? This man has been waiting patiently and professionally for his disclosure, which you have a duty to provide, and you still have not provided it. This is an embarrassment. You have to get your ducks in a row." And I look over and I'm just like, oh, damn. Jamie McPherson was getting reamed out by the JP. I look over at her and she is fuming red. Like she is just like about to burst a vessel. She is fuming red because she was getting like, looking like a unprofessional, like unorganized, like, and so the Crown, sorry, so I looked over at Jamie McPherson and she was completely fuming red. Like she was red in the face, having to, of course, hold back her, probably some choice words she wanted to say to the JP. So at that point, the Justice of the Peace ruled in my favor that the Crown's standing is illegal and that they are unable to proceed with a trial. And there, at that point, all the charges were dropped, and that was the moment that I won.
Wow. Were you satisfied at that point, because they hadn't said, okay, we acknowledge your rights?
Yeah. So it was a mix. First and foremost, it did feel like I won the championship of a world. To put into perspective, while I shared this story in 45 minutes or whatever, it took 3 years. From March 15th, 2010 to March 26th, 2013. And so there was a lot of energy and a lot of time and everything that I had put in. So to be able to win in the way that I did, it felt significant. Felt like I won the championship. I was definitely riding a high. There's a lot of stress and every pressure and everything that was still built up. And I won before trial. So by winning before trial, there was no precedence that was set. There was no, I didn't present any arguments on the record around, the right to travel. And so while on one side, I didn't feel satisfied with the way in which I won, I did feel satisfied with how I conducted myself. And what I realized was, when I gathered was, I discovered my own power in relationship to the law. And I also knew, like, I started to feel like what a difference it would make if others were able to know and to find theirs as well too.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that really, well, hey, Elijah, do you have any thoughts before we kind of use this as a launching pad into our next round of conversation? Sorry, your audio's off.
Well, I think just a quick congratulations, because I think, you know, staying the course and going through the process and showing up each time, you know, takes diligence, discipline, and focus, and having that victory in mind. But I can see how, you know, there are bigger things out there to set precedent, and I'm just wondering, you know, now in the world of vax mandates and travel restrictions,
yeah,
and what we're going through right now, like how have you taken what you've learned, and how is that moving into now? And perhaps Shambhu, you have something to add to that.
Well, just exactly what you're pointing to there, Elijah, is you know, just the right to protest, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I'd love you just to touch on that. Just, is it legally binding? Is it actually the basis for our rights? But also mandates, are they law or suggestion? And, you know, you already started to talk about the rights of movement, but as we know, that we have, that there's talk of tracking our movements, and also the limitation of movement for unvaccinated people. And then, you know, we'll go into racketeering, antitrust, and the fact that pharmaceuticals are immune to liability. But that's all, you know, we can get into that.
Yeah. So pretty big topics, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's okay. This is an extended one. We're going for a 24-hour podathon here.
Boom, boom, boom. Let's do it. First ever 24-hour podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's significant amount of what I experienced and what I learned is relevant for today. In fact, I realized and feel and recognize that those experiences actually have prepared me for who I am to be and what I'm here to contribute. When there was a fair amount of questions that were asked, and like different touch points. There was one that pops first to mind is the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And you asked, is that the basis for our rights? And the short answer is no. That is not the basis for our rights. Now, I want to qualify, again, coming from a place of humility, that some of the things that I'll share are even disputed amongst legal scholars and legal law professors and lawyers alike too. So in some way, shape, or form, like this may not be the I don't present to have the ultimate truth, but what I am sharing is what I've found, and I can also then share the reasoning behind it as well. So when it comes to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that is not the basis of our rights. Specifically, reading the Charter, you will see that the Charter and the Constitution generally are rules for the government to respect and protect these said rights. It's a document to legally bind the government to protect our rights. Nowhere in the Constitution or the Charter does it, the Constitution Act or the Charter itself, does it state that these are rights that we, the government, are granting to the people.
So it's making a suggestion or binding the government to have these rights
Duty protected
in mind, in heart, while they're making their governance.
So yes, yeah, exactly, and have a legally binding contract, you could say. You can think of it like contract law as well. See, legally binding contract to limit what the government can and cannot do.
Okay.
And notably, the core function of a government, the reason why government has been instituted amongst men, is to be an organization to protect our rights constantly. It's all about protection. That is the core function of a government, is to be the biggest badass protector ever in the history of anything we've invented.
So you're saying for them to protect the profits and rights of corporations is their principal mandate?
No, I didn't say that.
Yeah, I'm joking.
Okay. I'm like, where did he get that from? Wait a second.
It's inferred through action and history.
By current events.
Right.
So so that's one touch point is in relationship to the Charter. And as far as where do our rights come from then is quite a significant question and a vital question to ask. And the answers of course is even more significant, which is this: our rights are inalienable. Our rights actually come from our existence. The study of natural law prepared me with the awareness that natural law is a study of human interaction that produces the most peace and prosperity and harmony in society. And so how do we interact and engage with each other that produces the most peace, prosperity, and harmony in society? This is the origin, this is the backdrop to the recognition and the observation of what has now become our rights. Right to life, liberty, and property. From that is where all other rights, spring from, is from that fundamental base of life, liberty, and property. And our rights existed before government existed, right? And natural law doesn't have to be taught. Even babies know it's wrong. When if they have an ice cream and you just take it from them, you violated their property rights, they'll start crying, they'll start complaining, and if we look at a court, when somebody files an action, like if we have like a, civil litigation and one party suing another, they file a complaint to the court. So even a child will start complaining if you took their ice cream. So natural law really doesn't have to be taught. It's actually so much built in us. And it's very, very intuitive in that respect. So the origin and understanding of our rights, where they come from, it starts to actually flip the script to a gradual recognition of one's individual sovereignty. And individual sovereignty, I believe this is kind of a global phenomenon that's emerging right now. Is we may have, for the first time in known history, the rise of individual sovereignty within humanity. And sovereignty is a state where you are the highest authority in your own life. And to respect each other is to respect each other's rights and to respect each other's sovereignty. A sovereign doesn't mean that, you know, you're a monarch who commands everybody. That's a false definition, and completely false, I would say. But sovereignty is a state where you are the highest authority in your own life. Now, authority is another word that I want to touch base on in relationship to the very structure of government from what's even been published. So if you go to ourcommons.ca, it's the website, it's the Government of Canada's website that presents how the system operates, how the system works, how the parliament and the legislator, and how the executive branch and how the judicial branch and how the whole thing is set up. And what is shared word for word is that the Government of Canada represents the Crown and derives its authority from the Canadian people. That means that the authority with which the government is wielding gets it from the people itself who it's been authorized to serve. So you, myself, and all of us, we are the authorizers of this authority. The authority starts with us, and then the government derives its authority from us. We delegate that power of the authority to this organization to protect our rights. And the bigger question at play, and this is like a sovereign question for sure, is, did I authorize that? Do I authorize this? All these emergency actions and health orders and all of that, did I authorize that? It's a completely different question, let me tell you. And it also then starts to bring the power back in your own seat as an individual of being like, wait a second, I am the authority. I'm the one who's now delegated that authority. I'm the source of the authority, and I've delegated it to the government to represent me, a representative form of government that we have. Right? And if you're not being represented, in fact, if you're being vilified, then you, for instance, like with the divisive and quite hateful rhetoric by the Prime Minister Trudeau, calling the unvaccinated racist, misogynist, anti-science, and putting the rest of us at risk, and they shouldn't be able to sit beside somebody else and put them at risk who's vaccinated, which one makes no sense, but two, it is in my view hate speech, especially coming from an official of his stature. So that kind of divisive rhetoric itself is quite a violation. I was going somewhere with that. Shoot. Authority, authorizing. Oh my gosh. Oh shoot, I lost the trail.
Shambu, you want to help him out? Were you tracking?
Well, we're talking about rights, the basis of authority, which is really amazing to me that you, yes.
I remember, thank you. And so bringing that back and realizing, like, wait a second, I am the authority here, and I've delegated it to the if I have the right and if I have the power, rather, the power to delegate authority through my consent, I have the power to reclaim authority through my dissent, which is the opposite of consent from a legal definition perspective.
Which is such a pivotal point when I brought up the right to protest.
Yes.
And how what happened with the truckers, with the convoy, this attempt to literally shift the narrative to the opposite of what you're saying, is that people do not have a right. and they are terrorists if they attempt to actually do that. And I was just wondering, just what some of your insights or inspiration around that when you saw that the government is starting to actually to shut down bank accounts of people who even donated $10 to the to this or the ability to actually gather. And I was quite shocked at some people's reactions who lived in Ottawa. I used to live in Ottawa. It's a government. It is the capital. You should expect that people gather all the time for this.
Yeah.
And so there seemed to be this kind of pedestrianness, and just was wondering your thoughts around that. What's been coming out?
So I was fortunate enough to actually go to Ottawa and to experience it kind of at its peak with the Freedom Convoy and coming together. So yeah, the way the federal government and even provincial governments responded was completely irresponsible on all levels. Specifically, people came to peacefully protest, and there's no way. Rather, I'll say this in a different way. There's no evidence to conclude that this was somehow not a peaceful protest. This was absolutely a peaceful protest, and even Trudeau, never said it wasn't a peaceful protest. So, you could say he was in agreement through omission. But that being said, the government failed so significantly, specifically because it failed to address what caused the issue. Like what led up to this point. Right. It was like, oh, now we have this protest, and now try to demonize and vilify these people. And there was a few things that just didn't stick. At first, it was trying to be called a white nationalist movement there was someone who had a Nazi flag and Confederate flag, but that didn't stick because you had all these Sikh truckers, hundreds of them, thousands maybe. I was there, and I'm a man of a mixed descent. My dad's from Jamaica, my mom's from Holland, so that's very inconvenient. That doesn't stick, because how can you be a white nationalist but you're also a black man? Like, hi, like, what's up? So it was just so glaring and quite revealing to see the state of immaturity in the entire government apparatus, particularly the government actors who hold these seats of authority. And then the rights in short were not respected at all. And in fact, I can contend that they were violated. Now there is some arguments that some arguments which I do think have some validity, which is that it no longer becomes a protest when you're blocking other people's right to use the common ways of the land and right to access the city, right? So, having all the trucks and everything parked there, you could not drive down there. Like, it was definitely blocked off. So we've never seen a protest like that before. It's unprecedented in that respect. So, but on the flip side, these mandates that led to this reaction by the people who are peacefully coming together to protest, that's also unprecedented. And so, what is the where is the line? Like how do you navigate through that? And the mature way to navigate through that would to actually be to speak with the people who you have been authorized to serve, who have delegated their authority to you, which gives government its very power to operate on from a financial perspective, but even on a legal perspective, you have a duty, in my view, you have a duty to correspond with those who have come to say, who have dissented or saying, no, we will not do this. And if that unfolded, if we had a parallel universe where Justin Trudeau summoned the courage to actually speak with the protesters, specifically their organizers who had requested to have meetings. There was scientists there, and there was scientists there, there was a doctor there. There was I forget their names right now. There was even a former premier who was there speaking. There was plenty of opportunity to actually have a productive dialogue within this situation, and that would have turned the tides very much. It could have actually been a unifying moment. It could have been a moment where, you know, it could have given so much more clout even to Justin Trudeau. Not to say that that would be the goal, but I'm just saying that, like, it could have been something that, you know, brought the country together, more of a unifying moment. If he had actually just spoke with the organizers of the protests and have a public conversation. You know, he's the most secure and guarded man in the entire country. So, you know, for them to arrange that, there was absolutely no risk on him and his life or anything like that. Everyone there was unarmed. The only people who are armed are the police and all the guards. And so, yeah, there was really no reason from a perspective of fear or even practicality that they could not have had that kind of engagement. Instead, we see quite the opposite. We saw the state retaliate with lethal force that's ultimately paid for by the taxpayers against them. Completely vilified, you know, brought in. Yeah, sure, the military wasn't called, but when you have police with M16s, what's military, what's not, right? And yeah, just coming in and then, you know, literally beating the shit out of, you know, literally beating up the protesters. Like there's some footage where there was officers giving knees, like 4 or 5 knees to somebody who was already arrested. And then having, you know, all the property confiscated. And then you talked about even about the bank accounts being seized. This is a bigger conversation for sure around jurisdiction and status, but what kind of precedes the government actually having the capacity to even go into the bank accounts at all. Like there's so much to legally unpack there.
I just need to jump. Can I just jump in for a second? Because I think we're coming to the end, and sure. I would like to maybe have a bit of time for each of us to do a summation of what we've learned here today, and maybe directions that we can go forward in the future. Because I think that, Justice, what you've done is you've set a precedent in terms of your own ability to go to court, and your own ability to represent yourself, and your own ability to sort of figure out some things that I think a lot of other people need to know. And then for us to sort of proceed in maybe a larger, whether a class action or for each individual to start representing themselves in court, because I would like to in some sense, and I think probably a lot of people would like to. So why don't we just finish up a bit here, because there's a little time left, but I'm just wondering, Yogi Shambhu, if you want to have a summation and a thank you, and for Justice for you to do as well, and then we'll end the episode.
Okay, thank you. Wow. I just want to talk about just long-term, the visioning it takes, and lifting ourselves out of the immediate concerns that we have. We're a very short-term, short attention span. We've been really conditioned in this way. And what I'm seeing from you is the long term, that we know that the actions that we're going to be doing now is actually setting a precedent. It is building a case for us into the future. And I think that that is the most profound thing that I am seeing, that I'm getting from this interview today, as well. That I know from my history within the environmental movements is that the police, the authorities do things knowing that it can't really be called out now, but that it will be addressed in the future. But yet, oftentimes there's a lack of follow through, or there's a trauma. And so, therefore, people do not hold the authorities to the fire in the long run. And therefore, it doesn't play out in court, or the media is so short term in their attention that they won't cover it, even if it is. And so, this has really got my wheels churning here, and thinking of how we can use these technologies, and ultimately the inspiration that you've given us. So I really thank you from the bottom of my heart to be here, and I look forward to you being a reoccurring guest here on the Inside Scoop.
I'd absolutely love it.
Great. Is there anything that you'd love to leave us with?
Yeah, in closing, to summarize it, I'd like to share and announce that I'm actually in the preparation to file action against both the province of BC and the federal government of Canada, specifically around the very premise and jurisdiction of a health order and obligations that could be imposed on people to ultimately restrict their freedoms, and set on the record a clear line between where my freedom ends and where a health order ends. Where is that line? Because the government cannot have unlimited jurisdiction, especially the executive, to do whatever it wants. If we live in a free country and I have freedom that is to be protected, where does it end? And there's much to talk about with mandates and the definitions of mandates, because nobody looks at the definition of mandates. But I'd like to announce that I'm taking action right now, and I'm going to be filing pretty much any day now. Just getting a few last pieces with the statement of claim. But yeah, I'm ready to take action to set new case law to make it in such a way that this can never be done again, with this backdoor utilization of a health order, because it's never been this pathway of exploiting the health order has never been tried in the past. This is the first time it ever happened. And so I want to set new case law, set a precedent, set new case law where for any now future emergency, be it a war or be it a climate emergency, that the government does not have the jurisdiction to compel free people against their will, and that it must be voluntary.
Wow. This type of back and forth, this rigorous teasing out and testing, it's what we have to have as people to earn, to pay our rent inside of democracy, inside of freedom. So thank you so much. And what a privilege and a pleasure. And Elijah, always to you. Is there any final thoughts that you have before we close up?
Well, I think that we're entering into a new world of media. And what I see, let's say within Planetary Guardians Media, is to take specific issues and to follow the issue all the way along, and to have a media team there to follow the issue all the way along. And so not to have just this sporadic once in a while, we hope something may happen, but actual monitoring and tracking and support crews and international support. So I'd like this to be like a boost or a start of a show, a web TV show, where you are being watched and supported in what you're doing, because you're like a pioneer that's setting the tone for all of us. And since you're there, you need the help of the people that are going to be helped by what you are doing. So I think if we're looking to the future, what we're going to create out of this together, is that forming more teams and doing things with a much larger infrastructure in support. So thank you for everyone listening. Thank you for Yogi Shambhu. Thank you so much for Justice for coming on our show. And we'll see you next week on the Inside Scoop.